Hello, Hero Factory, and welcome back to Kids Church. It is so good to see you, and it is so good to have you with us today. If this is your first time, we love that you have joined us at church, but if this is your 762nd time, then it is good to see you as well. So over the last couple of weeks, and it has been a couple of weeks, I think we might be on like week 9 now, maybe, we have been looking at the armor of God. That is right. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at the armor of God. Now, remember, in Hero Factory, we have our Kids Church week, which is this week, and then we have our life group week. So we do the same theme over 2 weeks. We learn about it, and then we learn about it a little bit more. So over the last couple of weeks, we have been learning about, let's see if I can remember it, the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes fitted with the gospel of peace, and the shield of faith. And today we are going to move on to our next piece of armor. Now, can anybody guess what it might be? Any guesses? Interesting. Now today I've got a little clue. Got a little clue to see if you can guess what our next piece of armor is. Close your eyes. Everyone close your eyes. Okay, open them. This doesn't fit my head, but today we are talking about the helmet of salvation. Now, helmets are so important, and I'm sure that you have all got a helmet that you wear for when you are on your bike or your skateboard or your rollerblades, or just for any other time that you are driving something that has wheels. A helmet is so important, and it's so important because it protects what's inside our heads. I've seen before when people have fallen over and not had a helmet on, and it is giving them so much damage. Now, people sometimes have to wear helmets for their jobs. You've got builders, again, a hat that doesn't fit my big head. You've got builders who wear helmets to protect their heads just in case anything falls on them when they're building stuff. Firemen wear helmets. Police wear helmets. Lots of people have to wear helmets for their job. And the reason why they do that is because the helmets protect what is inside. Our head is so important, and so we need to wear helmets to protect them. Now, I'm not saying you need to wear a helmet every single day. Like, imagine going to school and just wearing a helmet. Imagine sat in Hero Factory now and everyone's just wearing a helmet. That would be a little bit weird. But when you are doing something that could potentially be dangerous, it's actually really important to have a helmet on your head just in case anything can fall and damage you. Now, in the Bible times, when people were going into battle, and even in the olden days, when people were going into battle, they had to put on their full armor. They would have had their belt and their shoes and their breastplate and their shield and their sword. Now, it's a little bit different these days, but I reckon if they could only have one piece of armor, they would choose the helmet, because the helmet protects what's inside your head, and what is inside your head is so important. Now, today we're learning about the helmet of salvation. So we know what a helmet is, and we know why that's important. But what is salvation? Has anybody ever heard of the word salvation before? Oh, a few of us. So salvation is all about being saved. Being saved. Now, you've probably heard me or another Hero Factory leader talk about being saved. And being saved is all about being saved from all the things that we have done wrong. Just like a helmet is so important to have, and probably the most important piece of armor going, our salvation is the most important thing. Being saved from all of the things that we've done wrong, which I know that you know this, the word for all the things that we've done wrong is sin, is so important. Now, you all know this story, but I think it'd be really good to recap. Let's recap and find out what Jesus did to save us from all the things that we have done wrong.
The story of Easter. Jesus' sacrifice. This is Jesus,
Heyo!
who is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. While Jesus was on earth, he taught everyone about God's love and healed people from their sickness. He he did many miracles like calming storms and even raised people from the dead.
Wahoo!
The Jewish leaders and teachers did not like what Jesus was doing or how he claimed to be the Son of God. And so they made a plan to arrest him to get rid of him once and for all. Judas, one of Jesus' disciples, agreed to betray Jesus
Come in.
and give him over to the religious leaders for some money. Jesus was in a garden praying, and Judas showed the man who Jesus was. Jesus was arrested and taken to the rulers of the land so that they could decide what to do with him. Jesus was presented before the high council, and they asked him if he was the Messiah, the Savior of the Jews. They asked him if he was claiming to be the Son of God. "You say that I am." And the council was furious, and they shouted that Jesus was guilty and he deserves to die. So they took Jesus before the Roman ruler Pilate, and he heard the case against Jesus. Pilate didn't think that Jesus had done anything wrong.
Seems okay to me.
They found him to be innocent, so Pilate said that he would punish Jesus and then release him.
What?
But the crowd kept screaming louder and louder, "Crucify him! We want him dead!" And because of the pressure of the crowd, Pilate turned Jesus over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified. Jesus was hurt and spit on, his clothes were torn and taken from him, and a crown made out of thorns was put on his head. He was beaten so badly that he could barely stand on his own. And then he was forced to carry his cross so far up a mountain that he needed help because he could not do it on his own. Once Jesus made it to the place where he would be crucified, called the Skull, the soldiers around him nailed him to the cross and waited for him to die. While Jesus was hanging on the cross, many people shouted to him, "If you really are the Son of God, save yourself from the cross." But Jesus knew he had to die to forgive his people for their sins. At noon, darkness fell across the whole land. 3 hours later, Jesus took his last breath and finally died. At that very moment, the curtain in the temple that separated the priests from God's holy place tore in two. A soldier watching the whole thing said, "This man truly was the Son of God." Then a righteous man named Joseph came and placed Jesus' body in a tomb. 3 days passed, and it seemed that there was no hope. But very early on Sunday morning, the woman who cared for Jesus went to go visit his body and found that his tomb was empty and that he was no longer there. "Don't be afraid," said an angel. "He is not here. He is risen." At this, the woman remembered that Jesus had told them that he would rise again on the third day. And ran to go tell the disciples what they had seen and heard.
Huh? Heyo! Ah!
And then for the next 40 days, Jesus appeared to his disciples and many others and showed them that he was alive and well. He taught them that what he did was the only way that they could be forgiven and be with God forever. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have eternal life.
So you have just re-watched the story of Jesus dying on the cross. And when Jesus died on the cross, what happens is he took on the weight of all of our sin and all of our shame and all of the things that we have ever done wrong. He saved us from our sin and our mess and our mistake. Now, today we've been talking about the helmet of salvation. And just like a helmet is so important to wear to protect our minds and our brains and our faces, it is so important. Being saved is so important. It's like wearing a helmet into battle. Wearing a helmet into battle is so important, but also being saved is so important. Jesus died on the cross. He died for all of the things that we have ever done wrong. And when he died on the cross, and when we accept that he did that, and when we ask him into our hearts and ask him to be our friend, everything changes. Everything changes. All of the other pieces of armor, they're so important. And you know what? We can wear our belt of truth and be truthful. And we can wear our breastplate of righteousness and do the right thing. We can tell people about God, and we can, do all of have our faith like this. But if we don't have our salvation, which is being saved and asking Jesus into our hearts, then actually we're missing the most important piece of armor. All of those other pieces are so important, but the helmet is the most important. And the helmet of salvation is the one thing that we need to make sure that we are wearing. And you see, one way that we can ask Jesus into our heart and acknowledge what he did for us and say sorry for all the things that we've done wrong is by asking him to be our friend and asking him into our life. Now, I've talked enough, and I've told you how important salvation is and how important helmets are. I mean, I just wish this one would fit my head, because it doesn't fit my head. Now, the helmet of salvation is so important, and our salvation is so important. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hand back over to our leaders who are with you in the room, and they're going to talk a little bit more about salvation and how we can be saved and why this is so important.